Issue 141. We start out seeing the Hunter swinging an arm of chaos energy, and he throws something looking like a classic Sonic bumper for no reason that sends chaos energy all over the place to hurt some echidnas, with him saying that one's down even though there's multiple people he's attacking. He then says there's millions to go, and Eggman tells him, "Stop wasting time, you echidna-obsessed loon, and bring me the Master Emerald." Meanwhile, during some pointless panels that serve nothing except to remind you what happened just one issue ago, Leander complains that none of this would have happened if they didn't have to waste time and manpower staging Locke's rescue. Naturally, Sonic's confident he can win with his speed. I'd like to point out that if he had only run at the speed of sound out of here after the Hunter instantly, instead of sticking around to arrogantly congratulate himself, maybe people wouldn't have died to that guy. Locke suggests that Sonic take his son along for the ride, even though Knuckles lampshades he can't do anything to help. Sonic tells Knuckles to ditch the gear because he likes to travel light, even though he's strong enough that carrying him with his air necklace and stuff shouldn't matter to him. While Knuckles' mother, Remington, Wynn, and Dr. Finidibus are worried, Archimedes shows up teleporting there and says that there's no time for explanations. They all have to hurry into the Master Emerald Shrine. I mean, couldn't he have explained it to them while they were running into the shrine? Remington tries to insist on staying here to fight whoever's about to walk through the door. Being drawn or blind once again, he's allowed to defeat a major threat alone. Dr. Finidibus, short-tempered as usual, asks Archimedes who gave him the authority to be here, and he's told that Locke did when he asked him to keep an eye on the Master Emerald after he entrusted it to the Dark Legion. So now it makes more sense that Locke would entrust it to them. Then that same mysterious figure with an A on the hat says, "You," and since Archimedes is in the same shot, I guess it means he's not Archimedes. I still don't know who that is, by the way, and I've read like 20 issues ahead by now. The Hunter then shows up right away, causing Remington to try to attack him and I guess kill him off for real. It would have been much more tragic if this had happened before he started creepily worshipping Knuckles like other echidnas, a concept which, I'll remind you, was not by Penders at all. Then Dr. Finidibus goes to face the Hunter, and Archimedes teleports to Charmy's fiance, telling her what happened, crying. This causes Charmy's future wife to say that it's up to them to make sure the Master Emerald doesn't fall into the wrong hands, while the Master Emerald's in the background sending us waves of chaos energy for no reason. Right after the Hunter shows up, Sonic and Knuckles finally come here as I wonder why the Hunter had the chance to kill Remington with Sonic running to the building at over 600 miles an hour, which couldn't have been that far away. The fight starts, and after Knuckles is surprised at Archimedes being here, Sonic asks what this bumper thing is, and is told that's something to keep him occupied, as then pointlessly distracted, while the Hunter goes on his mission. This is actually pretty clever, like they're having a classic Sonic bumper here and actually using the reference in a clever way, as he bounces off it like an actual bumper. Knuckles then decides to go after the Hunter in a rage, because I guess he thought telling Sonic to stop and come along would be impossible. And then the group of people bringing Locke back notice a whole chaos energy mass around their home, with Linda shouting at him that the Dark Legion's base had been discovered because he foisted the Master Emerald on them, which she calls stupid, even though it's a major source of magical power, so why wouldn't she want it? Julie Sue then stands up to her. By the way, I'd like to point out that people complain about the Julie Sue kind of echidna naming thing, but Avatar The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra kind of does it too, doesn't it? You have Zhu Li, and you have Ju Di. They basically do the exact same thing. They take the normal names that we know and put hyphenate them and stuff. Make them a little different. And I don't see why when Avatar does it, it's cool and creative. But when Penders does it, it's the worstest thing ever. I'd just like to point that out. It seems amusing. But yeah, Julie then stands up to her that she accepted the emerald because of the power and wasn't forced into anything. Then she continues to yell at her about her constant misbehavior, which includes throwing in people's faces that the emerald was entrusted to her, and constantly complaining about her responsibilities. She says, "Well, stop complaining, Linda, and if you're gonna be a real leader, grow up and start acting like one." This causes Linda to glare at her back, but with tears going down her face that inexplicably no one seems to notice. It's obvious that her speech hit her hard. Then Vector is put into the odd role of trying to play the mediator for once, saying they should be fighting dingoes instead. And after Julie lampshades Leonda's lack of a fruiting excuse walking away, Leonda says in the dark, resentfully, "Father loved you more." Wow, I got one. Except, I didn't get one. because why would she ever think that? It'd be more compelling if I had more proof. I guess a food excuse doesn't have to be rational when true for a person to be affected by it. Julie and the heroes go to try to help Knuckles. The hunter insults Knuckles because he used to be strong, and then Knuckles screams, covered in pink energy, and goes into Super Knuckles without 7 Chaos Emeralds. The only possible excuse for this is that the Master Emerald is here, which would also be strong enough for super form. But the Master Emerald was cursed to drain his energy. So this is just them pulling a super form out of nowhere because they wrote themselves into a corner, making the hunter too powerful, and Sonic simply spin dashing him with super speed would be too violent. Then Archimedes is told that he was right without us knowing what he meant. I'm hoping that's a little more of a justification. Then we see the Chaotix fighting the Dingoes with fire behind them and the Dark Legion helping out, and Super Knuckles sends the hunter to the water, causing the Dingoes to retreat. And much to Linda's amusing annoyance that I definitely share in, even some Dark Legion goons start calling Knuckles an avatar. I guess calling him hero or guardian would be too bland, but again, what is he an avatar of? Do they know that, and that's symbolic of how stupid this is supposed to be? Either way, predictably, Knuckles' chaos powers have returned. I still don't get the point of him losing them in the first place, and especially not if he gets them back so easily. I mean, it was interesting, but it was so inexplicable and unjustified. If he lost them because of a magic spell from Ixis, it would have been better. Naturally, Locke explains that his powers had never left, and simply remained dormant since he returned from the afterlife, and finally a good explanation is given to all this. Knuckles hasn't been in contact with Master Emerald for all that time, so the contact with it must have been necessary to retain them. Sorry, he said, reawaken them, which doesn't make as much sense. Regular contact retaining it, sure, that's where he gets his power, but if mere contact with the Master Emerald is enough to restore his powers, then why the hell was he all doubled over in pain and drained of energy by it in the first place? Then a hologram of Eggman says that while Knuckles may be useful again, he still has Master Emerald's location, an army of egg pawns en route to that not-so-hidden palace. Sonic then amusingly destroys the thing, broadcasting Eggman's bragging, saying, "Ah, shut up!" And I can't help but remain smiling at that, as Locke says, "We've got to move Master Emerald to no hiding place." Really? You don't say! Archimedes says that Dr. Finitevus was killed by the hunter, which I don't buy one bit with his major presence in the story, especially since he smirked at him. He must have had a trick up his sleeve. And Leonida, for some reason, says there's no reason to waste time mourning family while we see a picture of the constable with some other person who she's not related to. Knuckles makes Locke promise to keep an eye on Leonida and the Emerald while he's gone, as a Freedom Fighter special arrives because, well, I'm not sure how the people in it knew their mission was done. Did they get called on a cell phone? Did it coincidentally show up at the right time? Either way, Locke gets pretty mad about the idea that Knuckles and Julie are leaving the island because Knuckles made a promise to Sally to return to Knothole as soon as he's rescued Locke. This makes perfect sense considering that now we're following up on that fight Sally had with him about him not being a freedom fighter with his powers, resolving a dangling plot thread in a way that was subtle until now, as it showcases his character development. Naturally, Locke says, "But what if your duties as Guardian of Angel Island?" It made sense that he'd say that, but he should have said "what about" instead. That would have made the sentence flow more naturally, and in fact I misread the sentence as that at first. Knuckles explains that seeing everything that's happened here while he was away made him realize that if Eggman takes over Mobius, the whole planet would be in trouble, and not just Angel Island. Locke, because he's more traditionalist, shouts at Knuckles for turning his back on his home and not liberating the island from evil, and tells him to suit himself. And then we end the story seeing Eggman surrounded by echidnas and blue spears being put electricity into, as well as a few fire ants, and Remington is one of the victims, even though I thought he was killed. And if the hunter thought his chaos energy warped people instead of vaporizing them, he wouldn't have bothered going after so many echidnas, and saying "one down, millions to go." Although I guess Eggman's plan was to trick him into thinking he was killing them. So this is pretty interesting. They might get roboticized, but I have a feeling for some reason that this is going to lead to something more interesting than that, because they're in blue spears instead of roboticizers. In the next story, Cobart panics that the apocalypse process is accelerating. And then, wait, what kind of glasses are those? They're mostly metal with some tiny circular lenses. Won't they do more to block his vision? Anyways, he asked Knuckles how he found him and Rotor in the lab. And Knuckles says he won't tell Leonda's favorite scientist his trade secrets, so no one will ever know. Sonic lampshades how Roto's trust in Kobar considering his position with Leonda, and he changes the subject because time is of the essence, and he explains what's happening to Mobius. Why is Sonic being treated like the villain for Robotnik firing his ultimate annihilator, and Sonic saving the entire world, detonating the quantum dial? And again, the idea that him going to the cosmic interstate causes chain events way later is just stupid. Maybe I could understand if the last two things caused his apocalypse right away, but not 25 years later. Knuckles then says that the Dark Legion has done zone hopping for centuries, which I hope means just them escaping the Twilight Cage. And the story ends with Leonda showing up and asking them why they didn't tell her what they're doing. While this story was uneventful, nothing but the characters talking about what they already discussed with the apocalypse scenario. They could have cut out a lot of the story, especially the part with Julie and Sally in it. Although I do love the fact that Kobar is Leonda's favorite scientist, it gives him more of a connection to the other characters, more overall significance, and explains how Roto might have bumped into him. So that was the second story by Ken Penders, and the first story by Carl Bollers. It's about Knuckles going super in front of the Master Emerald to stop the Hunter, which is really confusing since, while of course his powers were dormant in him all that time, it was clearly stated that the Emerald drained his power and made him all in pain. So why did that only get used for one issue, and then all of a sudden the Emerald gives him a super form? Shouldn't the opposite happen? Him getting a super form would have made sense if he had the 7 Chaos Emeralds near him, but he doesn't. So this all comes out of nowhere. I guess it is mandatory for a long-running series like a comic to have super forms come out of nowhere instead of having to rely on having all 7 Emeralds, because how likely is it that all of the 7 Emeralds are going to be there in one place? I mean, it's very lucky that they were there in the times that they were. But still, at least he gets his powers back. But that was one Deus Ex Machina. And unfortunately, it just makes the superstitious echidnas worship him even more, including a few Dark Legion goons. The overall story was interesting though, and it ends with Remington and a bunch of other echidnas I thought Hunter killed being in Eggman's confines, either being roboticized or experimented on in some other more interesting way. One of those echidnas is Dr. Finitivis. It makes sense that Eggman would manipulate the Hunter into thinking he was vaporizing the echidnas he hated so much, when really the Chaos Energy was just programmed to teleport them to him. I hope Knuckles killed him off for real this time and he didn't somehow survive falling into the water. Wait, how did Eggman get access to that Chaos Energy anyways? I mean, I guess he found a Chaos Emerald? The story was fine, it had some good tension, revealed that Archimedes was a good guy still protecting the Emerald, although I still don't know who the other evil-looking ant is and what he's about, so that's annoying. And it ends with Locke naturally being annoyed with Knuckles because he's got character development that made him realize he should be focusing on fighting Eggman and not just on staying in Angel Island like most Guardians would do. I still hate the way Knuckles' mom is drawn, looking unlikely unrecognizable and stupid. But really, the story had good enough concepts and plot to mostly be alright.